Hello and welcome to Understanding Emotions. My name is Sankalp. In this episode, we are going to talk about meditation. And if you've watched this show for long enough, I've been a proponent of meditation. There's this one video I made about how to start meditation and the lessons I've learned about from a decade of meditation. But in this video, what I'm going to talk about is some of the risks and pitfalls of meditation. And some of the things that we need to be careful about when we are considering meditation. A lot of times in pop culture, meditation is promoted as this hunky-dory, there's no problem, this is just beautiful kind of thing. And the risks with meditation as far as daily 5-10 minute meditation goes is minimal. But things really start to ramp up and it becomes a very serious thing if you're taking retreats, if you're doing retreats, or indeed if you're even doing it at home but you're doing it more intensively, or you're doing it instead of solving some other problem. So we're going to go in depth into these questions. We're going to really do a deep dive, and this podcast is really going to help you, hopefully, if you are someone who might be experiencing some adverse effects of meditation. And I'm going to try and lay a blueprint of sorts of various possibilities of what can go wrong with meditations. Now, of course, I'm not going to do a whole taxonomy of different experiences and so on, but really I'm going to talk about some broad categories that meditation might go wrong with. And so if you're intending to start meditation, especially intensive meditation, then hopefully this will help. And indeed, if you're on the other side and you might have been experiencing some problems with meditation, then this hopefully will be helpful. The problem with talking about this thing is you don't get this information where you should get it. You don't get this information, let's say, in retreats, or let's say with meditation teachers. When you go to retreats, when you go to meditation teachers, they might just say that this is the best thing ever, and if anything goes wrong, it's really your problem. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely not the case. I have been meditating for very long, and I've also been a student of psychology. And I can clearly see that a lot of times what passes as meditative experiences could be actually health problems and could be adverse health problems. So that's just a bit of a teaser there, and I'm going to go really deep into it. And hopefully lay the map of what can go wrong. So let's begin, and let's begin by first having this overarching sense of I'm looking there because I have my notes there. So hopefully, if you're listening to this on audio only, by the way, I'm making this effort to make this podcast video and audio. So while at this point it's just me with a talking head, and there's not much of a difference between the video and the audio. Eventually, hopefully, we'll have guests on the show. We'll have camera angles and so on. So if you don't know, it's going to be on YouTube, and you can just type my name in and find this. Most of this podcast audience is on audio, and indeed, this episode is going to be more or less audio friendly. But if you're watching to me on video, and if you see my gaze going on the side, that's because I'm looking at my notes here. All right, so the first thing to clarify is none of this is supposed to be I'm against meditation. And then the second is the reason why I'm making this video is because I listened to this set of well done, I would say, podcast called Untold the Retreat. And this podcast explores the dark side of meditation, the stories in which meditation has gone wrong in the context of a specific meditation organization and the specific style of retreat that this organization offers. So this organization, since it's all named, I don't mind saying the names, and I'll also tell you my relationship with this organization. So this is this podcast, Untold, Unheard, something like, I'm going to put the link down there. The retreat. I listened to this a couple of weeks ago on the suggestion of a friend, and it talks about the meditation experiences of people undergoing so-called Goenka style retreats, or Goenka Guruji style retreats if you're in India. Guru just means teacher. And these are retreats in which the form of meditation that's taught is mindfulness meditation or vipassana meditation. And in general, it has a very positive image. The Prime Minister of India himself paid a tribute to this teacher, S.N. Goenka. Goenka is no more. He passed away, but his organization still offers retreats, and the retreats are offered in a style of his teachings, including his own recordings and so on. And I personally have done plenty of retreats with this organization, and I will have things to say about that. So this podcast, Untold, the retreat from the Financial Times, explored the negative side of what happens in these retreats. And I encourage you to have a look at this, especially if you've struggled with meditation in this particular organization. But today's podcast, I'm not necessarily just focusing on this organization, but I'm trying to paint a broader picture of what can, a landscape of where I think there can be serious troubles and risks as far as meditation practice goes. So to start with, first thing to mention would be when I say risks of meditation, these risks largely come from a little bit of intensive meditation. So now this meditation could be in the context of retreats, and that certainly is intensive meditation. So for people who don't know what meditation retreats are, these are retreats from anywhere from 3 days length all the way up to 60 days length. 10 days a week is something that is very common, where beginners go, especially in the shorter ones, to learn meditation. And that teaching is done in a very specific context in which you're most likely not speaking for 7 to 10 days. You're eating one meal a day. You're waking up at 4 a.m. and meditating for 10 to 12 hours a day. You don't have any social contact. You're not allowed to read anything. You're not allowed to have anything with you like a magazine or your headphones or anything like that. And the idea there is you're just with your mind for the number of days for which the retreat lasts. So 10 days being the most common. I have done 3-4 of those. So I have a fair amount of experience in my belt. And so really where meditation goes wrong is in this sort of a context where people are doing it for so long and people are doing it for an extensive period of time. Now, this is not to say that the problems that I will talk about will not happen in a context of intensive retreats. And indeed, there are certain reports and stories that you will hear of just a few minutes a day, or I think more closer to hours a day. So if you're doing something relatively on the intense side, even at home, there could be a problem. So I'm going to talk about the problems that can arise from meditation. So broadly, I have classified the problems that can come through meditation into 3 categories. One is the psychological set, but this is really psychological in brackets. Oh, good luck. So if you're seeing this on video, I'm having some fancy things happening on screen. Anyway, so the first one is the psychological side of but really these are physical problems. So although they have an effect on mental health, the problem here is physical. The problem here is something like sleep deprivation. So that's category number 1. The category number 2 is psychological, but this is more on the mental health side of things. So this encompasses things like having a psychological breakdown, panic attacks, dissociations, and more psychotic style of episodes. I'm gonna cover them soon. And the third category of risks here is psychological risks, but more on the side of so something like this is part of a cult, let's say. So in this case, it's more of a socio-psychological risk where you are doing meditation, but really what's happening is you're part of this organization and your ways of thinking are being shaped by this organization. And then you have this cult-like affiliation with this organization that any evidence that you might hear which is opposing this particular organization is just discarded. You're just not able to see something that is contradictory, or see something that is detrimental, or see something that is morphed. So you're not able to take anything against the belief system of this organization. And meditation somehow, very sadly, has plenty of these organizations. And in the more extreme scenarios, you'll see all of these gurus and all of these teachers commit acts of sexual violence against their own students, and they claim to have this word from God, and they claim to have superpowers, and in some cases they create their whole countries, and that kind of thing has happened, or at least groups and organizations. So this will be more on the cult side of life, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. So let's walk through them step by step, starting with, let's start with the physical, because that seems to be the most straightforward one to explain. It seems to be something that most people will understand. So I'm going to speak in the context of meditation retreats, and I'll trust you to understand that while we are talking about retreats, it can still apply to the day-to-day situation, but perhaps to a lesser extent. And so I'll leave you to do the arithmetic of how much this applies to you and to what extent it might apply to you. All right. So let's talk about physical problems that arise as a result of meditation. And the number one thing you need to know about meditation is, often in retreats, you are placed on a fairly austere lifestyle. So what's happening, number one, is your sleep cycle is completely disturbed. Most retreats that I know start early in the morning. The Goenka style retreats start at 4 or 4:30 or something like that, is when you wake up and do your first sitting. And look, it's actually quite enjoyable sometimes to have that peace of the night and that serenity that 4 a.m. often brings with itself. But the problem there is, most people, when you go to retreats, probably are not on that 4 a.m. cycle. They're probably not on that sleep cycle, and most likely they are at least a couple of hours deviated, if not more. And if someone is a night owl, then that could be a complete phase shift. So I personally am a night owl, and I wake up at the minimum after 9 or 10 in the morning. And in that sort of a scenario, I'm like, that is a whole big phase shift of 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 hours. And so what's happening here is, the problem that might happen as a result of that phase change is going to be sleep deprivation. And we know that sleep itself has a lot of downstream consequences on mental health. It has a lot of downstream consequences on, indeed, physical health. So once you have that sleep deprivation for 1 day or for 2 days, then you will notice problems. You'll notice ill health. And this steps into a bit of the socio-psychological part, but oftentimes you may be told that these problems are coming as a result of your meditation, like there are some past deep traumas, or some defilements is a common word that's used, that are just coming on the surface, whereas all that's happening is you're sleep deprived, and no amount of meditation is going to solve it. So a solution often, so if you ask this question, you may be like, I'm distressed, and you go to the teacher might just be like, hey, maybe this is a natural part of meditation, and it might as well be, but it may not be, and it could be sleep deprivation. And the solution might be just, hey, meditate more, be more mindful. This is all in your mind, and this is like suffering is a part of the mind, which is all true, but it's not accurately diagnosing what the problem was. Add to that, particularly on the sleep deprivation point, is you often don't have enough sunlight in meditation retreats because your eyes are closed for 10 hours a day. So you wake up at a time where there is no sunlight, then you're often in a secluded meditation room or in a closed meditation room, and that's where you do not have enough sunlight going in through your eyes. And we do know that sunlight regulates the production of cortisol and your circadian rhythm in general. And so as a result, it's not a surprise if one does not feel good as a result of this phase shift. Now, this need not apply to everyone who attends a retreat, of course, because some people might be early risers. They might be waking up at 5 or 6 normally, and then it may not be that big of a difference to shift it by 1 or 2 hours. But if someone is not in that particular rhythm, then they will notice the effects of this phase shift. And often in meditation retreats, this effect will be somehow squished under the banner of the part of the meditation process where it may or may not be true. Other sorts of physical ailments can be things like an absence of complete nutrition. So I think most meditation retreats will serve you vegetarian food, and if you're not particularly well stocked up on your B vitamins in your body, you're not going to have those B vitamins for 10 days. So if you have that underlying predisposition, that can have a problem. Like I had this problem. So in one of the retreats I did, after the retreat, I basically ended up in a psychiatric, not hospital per se, but with a psychiatrist. So I was not admitted. And digging deeper after months and months, one thing we realized was it was actually just a predisposition with some nutritional deficiencies. So my approach of just like, let's go harder, let's meditate more, and let's get through this was not an optimal one, because at that time I was lacking vitamin D in my body. It's a very common deficiency. So you could have these predispositions. Another common one is a gut microbiome problem. A lot of mood comes from your gut microbiome. And if you have taken something like antibiotics prior to the retreat, then that would have wiped out your good bacteria. And as a result, it may have effects on mood, which you may not attribute it to that, but in fact attribute it to the meditation itself or some problem within you, even worse. Whereas it might be a bacterial thing going on in your gut microbiome. So there could be like n number of problems. And so that's why I want to summarize this category as you may have some physical problems either on the retreat, or there could be a predisposition of certain problems coming in. For example, a vitamin D deficiency. And that combined with this extreme sunlight deprivation for a number of days can trigger a cascade of mental health problems, which will not be caught as physical health problems, but will be caught as something to do with your meditation, which may or may not be true. The solution to that, unfortunately, will step into the second category very soon. But unfortunately, the solution to that tends to be very hard, because if you are in the retreat context, or even if you're at home but are listening to meditation teachers, very few meditation teachers will actually talk about your nutrition being the problem. They will interpret it as a psychological problem, as that's their bias, that's their job. And in fact, even this actually generally applies for mental health. A lot of times when you go to psychiatrists or you go to, let's say, therapists, no matter what problem you present, their bias towards understanding that problem will be something to do with mental health. So they might do thought work, where they might ask you about childhood, so on and so forth. But they would not ask about your nutrition. They would not ask about how well you're eating. So if you have had fried food yesterday, chances are high that if you feel very bad today, it at least contributes, if not is the sole cause. So this is a general problem, that a lot of mental health problems are passed on as mental health problem, but really under the hood, they are physical health problems, and they are nutrition problems, or they are lack of movement problems. So if you're curling in the bed the whole day, do not expect to feel good and complain about your mental health. So while it is true that there are effects on mental health coming from physical health problems, the cause of it was physical. And most of day-to-day mental health, in my personal opinion, this is not science, comes from not having good nutrition and good physical, not taking very good care of your physical body. And as a result, there are psychological problems. All right. So let's step into the second category. And this second category is about psychological problems that come as a result of social influences in the meditation center. And this will speak directly to the Financial Times coverage of the Goenka retreats, which I tend to largely agree with. So, um, so what happens in a meditation retreat is you're part of this social indoctrination, so to speak. So you are told what is good, you're told what is as they should, because they're teaching you a new technique, right? So you will get a signal of what is good, and it will also explain to you some problems that are very natural that come as a result of meditation. So one thing that the teacher might tell you is, hey, look, it's quite common that by day 3 or day 7 people get this urges to leave, and that is indeed common and does occur as a result of meditation practice. They will also tell you might have other unpleasant emotions and unpleasant sensations, which is also true, that it does happen as a consequence of just sitting in with your mind for that long. I think where this goes wrong is when any other. So now, when one does have a problem, they justify it to themselves that this is a part of the practice. And perhaps more seriously, even the teachers and the volunteers justify to themselves that this is a part of the practice. And this includes physical ailments. This includes like a knee pain, whereas a knee pain might be coming from sitting down for that long, not exactly the meditation per se. And in trivial quantities, in decent quantities, it's actually helpful because it does help you develop a resilience against physical and emotional discomforts. But what if it is not a result of that? And the problem is, if it's not, and if you have some predisposition, you have some mental health issues from the past, you have some physical predispositions, or nothing really, just sleep deprivation, there could be a number of reasons. What if the problem is not a healthy consequence of meditation despite being unpleasant? So one category of unpleasant emotions and sensations is a good thing because it helps you develop resilience. It's like your discomfort that you feel at the end of exercise. A lot of times doing high intensity work, it's quite horrible and it feels awful, and sometimes you throw up, but you still know that this is part of the practice, and you still know that this is not harmful. It's part of the deal. Whereas everything that happens, which is a problem, can be classified as a natural part of the practice, where that might absolutely not be the case. And indeed, the Financial Times podcast documents this heartbreaking case of someone who ultimately killed themselves at the end of the retreat, whereas they did multiple times sought support from the teachers, and they were just told that this is a result of the practice, which is absolutely devastating. And this is where it, well, while I don't agree with the podcast, there is that this particular organization is super cult-like. There's clearly cult-like elements here, but this particular organization does emphasize critical thinking enough for me to not particularly be worried of it as a cult. But there could be this belief system within any organization that teaches meditation about what is the interpretation of problems and what is the interpretation of mental health problems indeed. And that interpretation can be severely outdated, or it can be severely mistaken and severely ignorant. They don't have any clue of mental health, and it may not be a good justification they have for why someone is facing a certain problem, even if the problem is very serious. So in this social realm, the social problems, another problem is there often is no stop button. So there is no condition under which you should stop meditating, and there's no condition in which you should terminate. There is no exit, there is no way out. And so the context becomes that anything that happens, there is no condition in which it's acceptable to stop. And that is a big problem because, again, as I said, the problems could be coming from a meditation practice, but it could be coming from n number of other things. So there is no clear clarity on where the stop button is, and there's no clear clarity on when you should seek that stop button, not only for the students themselves, but for the teachers. And here's where I'm worried about the teachers and the volunteer community, where more more often than not, the person who's struggling will seek support. And again, be it in retreat context or be it at home, most of the time they will seek support. But the problem is, the first encounter they have with the volunteer in the retreat or with the teacher will effectively gaslight them into thinking that this problem is coming from meditation. And this is where the cult-like aspects becomes really huge. And this is where now just replace that justification for the problem with anything. It could be something as extreme as a sexual favor. And indeed, that's again a very sad reality of the social risks of meditation, where people do fall into these charismatic spiritual leaders who end up being sex offenders, because while they might as well be great meditators, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are ethical people in and of itself. And that doesn't mean that they don't have their own flaws. But what the mind of someone who is seeking meditation is probably vulnerable. They're in a space in life where things are not the best, and then they're going to these retreats seeking a lot of hope and seeking a lot of there's a lot of trust that they put in these leaders. And then of course you feel kind of good, you feel supported in this community, and now slowly you might fall into this trap of this cult-like personality who is just unethical beyond a point. So might be a great teacher, might be a great meditator, but might be sexually deprived and might be doesn't know how to handle their sexual desires and consent, and doesn't know these things, or indeed ethics with your teacher and student and that kind of relationship, which is a completely different ball game than teaching meditation and teaching how to focus on your breath. And of course, there is no shortage of spiritual teachers who claim themselves to be god men, and claim to have some special superpowers. And that is obviously a problem there. And a lot of people who go to these teachers might experience some joy, might experience some relief, and then they might incorrectly attribute supernatural powers to these leaders. So that is another serious risk as far as meditation goes, that if you're entering the meditation space, there's chances are high that you have some problem, that you have some vulnerability that you want to address. And that state of mind, coupled with this social influence and this isolated echo chamber, can sort of make you consumed with it, and you might lose your critical thinking there a bit. So the solution to this would be critical thinking, and to know that your opinion matters, and the way you feel, you do have the best understanding of what's happening within your body. And as a way of solution, I would urge you to, even if you go to meditation retreats, is to keep that center within yourself of critical thinking and of knowing that you know what's happening in your body the best. And oftentimes these volunteers or meditation teachers, as well intentioned as they may be, may not have the physical and mental health understanding to handle such a complex problem. So that's the social side, where you might be influenced in this by this guru or this charismatic leader, and you might form this echo chamber of beliefs. As a side note, this is the same mechanism of political polarization. We end up in some political camp, and then through social media or just by virtue of who you meet, you are reinforcing certain beliefs of yourself and not getting exposed to contrary views. And as a result, you might form this echo chamber of what's right and ultimately what's good, but it might just be informed by a set of homogenous beliefs. And you might just end up thinking that the right is bad or the left is bad or so on and so forth. Whereas what might be happening is you're just getting trapped in what's called as groupthink in social psychology, which is you're just conforming to the group and not really understanding reality fully. Um, so this is a good time to talk about the third problem that can arise as a result of meditation, and the third risk. And that risk is what I'm calling more on the classic mental health side. So this could be psychotic episodes as a result of intense meditation. And so if you have problems along these lines, then I think the best way would be to stop. But again, just my opinion. I would obviously encourage you to consult your doctors if you know you have any predisposition like that, to consult if you should go to meditation retreats. And if you feel like you're going to miss out, I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And if you're inside, then I would encourage you to have your own sense of what's healthy for you. And no matter how much the teachers or the volunteers might just ask you to stop and think of, I know in the Goenka retreats, it's shunned down if you are leaving meditation midway. And again, there are some good reasons for it, but the reasons may not trump the risks sometimes. And I would invite you to make that final assessment, not anyone else. So the other thing is, a lot of people go to meditation retreats thinking that it is a tool for stress relief, thinking that, or just any outcome for that matter, thinking you'll be more focused, thinking you'll be more determined, thinking you'll be more lighter. And all of this could be benefits of meditation, but they are not the purpose of meditation. And this discrepancy between what to expect and what people generally expect and what meditation is responsible for a lot of suffering in the meditation world. Most people think of meditation as a tool to get some sort of an outcome. And so if you want to get focused, then yeah, you meditate at home for 5 minutes, you feel a bit focused, and then you might be like, what must it be like to meditate for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 10 hours? And that might take you to a retreat. But that's unfortunately not how meditation works. The purpose of meditation is not to achieve any outcome. If you are doing any mental jujitsu with the intention of getting any outcome, then you're not meditating, then you're self-hypnotizing. And it has its place. Self-hypnosis is awesome, and I may do a podcast about it sometime soon. But then you're not meditating, you are engaging in self-hypnosis. Meditation, on the other hand, especially mindfulness meditation, is just observing what is happening, just observing reality as it is, without, this is the key part, without wanting it to be any different. So, if you are facing pain, then the point of mindfulness is to observe that pain and to understand the reality of that pain. So you may notice that the pain is flickering, you may notice that the pain is impermanent, you may notice that the pain grows and shrinks, and as a result, you develop insights about everything that happens in your mind and body. But notice, the aim of meditation is not to hope that that pain goes away. It's to not to do any jujitsu in your mind so that the pain goes away. That would not be meditation. And this is where most people fail. They would be like, oh, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z problems with meditation. And by fail, I don't mean like as a bad thing. I myself has fell into that trap multiple times. And to some extent, it's a natural progression. But anyway, you might be like, hey, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z problems. Why is meditation not helping me? And like, dude, it was never supposed to. And there's a lack of clarity on what the idea of meditation is. So let's say, and this analogy was given to me by Yuval Harari, who at that time when I emailed him, he was not that famous. So he did respond. And he gave this analogy of having a bacterial infection. So if you have a bacterial infection, of course you're going to go suffer. Of course you're going to feel fever, you're going to feel an upset stomach, you're going to feel just disastrous, right? But if you have that bacterial infection, the solution to that is not to observe that pain. The solution to that is not to just hope that meditation or mindfulness somehow will resolve it. The solution to that is taking antibiotics. And the same goes with any other pain. So you may not know the source of the pain occurring in your body, but it's not treatable through meditation, because the point of meditation is not to treat pain at all. Now, of course, as a side effect, sometimes we do experience stress relief, sometimes we do experience peace and calm and focus and all of those good things. But you may experience peace and calm and all of those things, but those will not be necessarily causal always. So there can be times in which you meditate and you actually feel unfocused, and you meditate and you feel scattered and you feel bad. It's completely unrelated. And your job as a meditator is to observe that reality as it is. And the point of meditation is to develop such a clear understanding of reality that you clearly understand suffering and happiness. And indeed, what I am saying is part of that clear understanding of meditation itself. So any amount of state change, then you're not doing mindfulness meditation, then you're doing something else. Now, of course, again, I'm not saying it can't be helpful, and not that state does not change, but you cannot predict that necessarily. There are many, many other factors that predict that state change. So just to be clear, that mindfulness has nothing precisely to do with state change necessarily. And the other mistake, and this is a mistake I made quite often, is to treat meditation in a very perfectionistic attitude. So it's like, if I do 5 minutes a day, I saw that I'm experiencing some benefits. Now, of course, I do more and I experience more benefits, right? Well, again, that's not true, because again, you're looking for state change there. And so the purpose of meditation is not to become a meditator. Like, there's no benefit in actually being good at sitting in the cushion. The purpose of meditation is to develop insight. And so just the amount of time on the cushion is not as important as the insight that you've developed. A lot of people sit on the cushion for years and they become these expert meditators and even teachers, but they may not have developed insight because they're just perhaps mind wandering, or perhaps just like single pointedly focusing, which is a different style of meditation. And so they might develop some mental athleticism to focus or to whatever, but they may not get insight in itself. And so most people who go to meditation retreats are looking for state changes, and they're looking to be like achievement oriented. And like me, I want to clock in hours so that I'm considered an expert. And in fact, that is quite contrary. Then you're just producing more suffering. And the purpose of meditation, by the way, was to reduce suffering. So there is no reason to meditate a lot. Like, the purpose, again, is not to become a meditator, but to understand the nature of reality as it pertains to suffering, impermanence, the nature of self, and so on. And all of these, if you're interested in what are these insights, then I have made a whole video on that called The Lessons I've Learned from a Decade of Meditation, or something along those lines. I invite you to check that out, and hopefully that will help you clarify the true purpose of meditation and help you understand the true purpose of meditation. So I've spoken a lot in this episode, and hopefully it is of some help. I guess the final thing I want to say is, if you are suffering through any challenges and risks of meditation, know that I'm sorry for you, and I feel you, and I've been there. And it's not you, and it's not that you are not meditating hard enough, and it's not that you are failing in some way. This is part of it. Might as well, and quite likely is, in the category of things that you have no direct control over. It's part of a larger social, psychological, physical spectrum, and we probably would not know the true cause of it sometimes also. But what I can say is, it's okay to stop. It's completely okay. And in fact, that's not even the purpose of meditation. Like, I feel my strength of insight has grown ever since I've had this understanding of, it's not about becoming a meditator. It's not about clocking hours. It's not about achieving a certain state of mind. And in fact, it could be a parallel track. So anything about state changes and achieving certain mental states should be done in parallel with meditation when you're just observing. These are not contradictory things. So when you have a bacteria infection, you can observe the pain as it comes, as it goes, and that will help you detach from the suffering of it. But at the same time, you need to take antibiotics, which will relieve that pain in itself. So this is where the distinction of pain and suffering comes in, And I invite you to check that video I made on the lessons that I learned through meditation. So know that these are parallel tracks. So you should absolutely be seeking help for getting physical relief. So visit doctors, visit psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever works. Now, of course, I do know there is a problem that most psychologists and psychiatrists will not be aware of the meditation context, and then you'll have some friction there. And I'm sorry about that. That is just the system. And indeed, most psychologists and psychiatrists may not be good enough just by virtue of the field is just developing, and we don't have like concrete answers in the area of mental health. So there could be a bit of a struggle, and if you are on that spectrum of more serious side of that spectrum, then I'm sorry, and I feel you, and I do invite you to seek help and seek professional help and get to the good news is there is more things coming out. Reach out to these psychiatrists or psychologists who might know about what's going on, or they're just good psychologists in themselves. But absolutely feel free to take a break and focus on your nutrition, which I absolutely recommend. Like get your blood panel done or something like that. Again, I'm not a doctor, but you can obviously speak to doctors and tell them about there could be like nutritional problems or the fact that you had sleep phase change and so on. And hopefully that will help improve your state and give you a whole holistic development of your mind and body, and you're not solely reliant on meditation as a means to improve your mental health. Because if you have bad mental health, the purpose of meditation there is to just observe that too, and you're just getting a clear understanding of reality even there, but it will not solve it, and the solution will come from a different parallel track. And I invite you to pursue the feeling better track separately than from your meditation pursuit. So just decouple that feeling good from meditation. They absolutely don't have anything to do with each other as far as mindfulness goes. Negative emotions are as much as part of mindfulness as positive are. But the state change, while meditation might be helpful, should come from something else. So this could be breathing exercises, nutrition, food, talking to people, social connection, hugging, you name it, exercise. All right, so I'm going to stop there. This has gone on for long. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to speak at the after show. So see you there. All right, welcome to the after show of Understanding Emotions. So just a few announcements. The first thing I want to say is I'm trying to be more video friendly now. Sorry that there's been a bit of inconsistency in my schedules, although I've still maintained the once a month roughly podcast. But I'm trying to be at both places, video and audio. And so hopefully you will be able to join me on YouTube. But if not, then this podcast will always be audio friendly. And if it is not, then I'll try to warn you in advance so that you have video on you. So the video will be on YouTube. The audio will be everywhere. And there will be like short form videos, more topical videos that are posted on Instagram, which actually right now is the most popular medium out there. There's like about 10,000 of you who are listening there. So that's brilliant. And so if you haven't checked out my Instagram, this might be a good time to do that. The second thing would be I am going to move also to try and incorporate guests and have people and have conversations around mental health, psychology, and so on. So I'm looking forward to that. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, I would appreciate that. And you can go to the contact section of the website. And I think I've just put my email address there. You can just send me an email, and that will be the best. But there's probably also a contact form somewhere linked in here, and that also comes to me eventually. Other than that, thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast and share this podcast with whoever you think might benefit from it. I hope this added some value to your life. I hope I was of help. And if you thought it was worth it, please do share it with people. It really helps out a lot. It helps the podcast grow, and it keeps me motivated knowing that people are not just like, it's not just numbers cranking up or down, but these are like real people who are benefiting and this deep understanding of mental health. So what I'm trying to do here is not just have these feel good comfort advice of mental health, but really have a solid, strong, insight based understanding of mental health. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. This is Sankalp signing off. Bye.